All right. Can you guys hear me now?
Barely.
Barely. What about now,
Yes,
Alex?
I can hear you.
I'm strongly apologize for this hiccup today. It's our second podcast, so make sure we get it right the next time. We're going to go on to the next question, Alex.
Go ahead. Yeah, you can repeat it.
Yes, yes. Why people of color vote Republican? What factors influence your own political shift towards a Republican Party, if any?
Well, people vote Republican. I notice in the Hispanic community, it's people who are business owners, though the majority of business owners don't vote Republican, but there's a certain block because they see firsthand what happens in their neighborhoods. Second, it's people who are religious, be they a conservative Catholic or an evangelical. But first and foremost, a lot of people that vote Republican are people who served, who wore the country's uniform. And that's why you now have that. But also, it's also the basis of people waking up and realizing, these Democrats, they sit on the city council, they sit on the school committee, they sit on the county commission, depending on what state you live in, and our lives haven't gotten any better. The people are waking up to the fact that a lot of promises are made, a lot of promises are broken. They Democrats tell people in the inner cities of this state and poor people in the South, well, the reason why you're poor is because of the Republicans. But the Republicans, when you look at the local board of governance, you don't see any Republicans there. You have out and about idiots like Brandon Johnson in Chicago, who has no business being the mayor of anything. Not even the mayor of the town that McDonald's based itself on, in commercials as a kid. I saw in the 70s. I mean, he's literally, when you think of the music group from the 80s, XTC, he's a mayor simpleton. You have a simpleton as mayor. And that's a problem, is that a lot of people we elect, and I hate, not that I want to focus on Black America, but Black America really needs to wake up because the so-called Democratic leaders aren't doing anything for them. At least Hispanics, you could know that a Republican get 35% of the vote, and there are more elected Hispanic Republicans than there are blacks. So skin color is not an issue. It's just an issue that one part of the American population has to realize that the party that fought to keep them as slaves is keeping them as slaves now in modern 21st century America. For Hispanics in general, is that we come here, we see, okay, this is what works, this is what doesn't work. Yes, the majority of Hispanics do vote for Republicans, but there is hope there. You look at Massachusetts, where there was a surge for Donald Trump in 2024. Lawrence went up, almost over 40%, I believe close to 45%. Framingham went for 38%. My city of Haverhill was something like 37, 38%. And these are communities with large Hispanic populations. In fact, Lawrence, I believe, is the most Hispanic city east of the Mississippi. So any gains that Trump made in the state was largely made because Hispanics were reached to better by Trump. Nothing because of the Massachusetts Republican Party, because they can care less about people like Donnie and me, what we look like, they don't care. But the Trump team did a lot of advertising on Spanish language radio. People just remember, economically, I had a lot better under Trump than under Magoo here, as I like to call dementia Joe Biden. And people saw that, and you see that Trump got nationally 45% of the Hispanic vote. So for me, those are factors that Latinos are entrepreneurial. You wouldn't have businesses in inner city America if it wasn't for Hispanics. There would be no Lawrence if it wasn't for entrepreneurial Hispanics. There would be no Framingham, downtown Framingham, if it wasn't for entrepreneurial Brazilians and Hispanics, primarily Dominicans like myself. So there's a large business class, growing business class, and a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them see that to run your business conservatively, to hire employees based on their abilities is the way to go. And so that's why you see simply a lot of people voting in the Hispanic community for Democrats, for Republicans. There's also social issues. Democrats like to hold on to this mantra that if you're a guy that dresses like a woman, you're a woman. No, we don't play with that. I'm sorry. You can be whatever you want to be, but I don't have to accept it. So nobody in the Latino community wants their son to be their daughter. Okay, nobody in the Latino community wants their daughter who busts her ass off in sports to lose to a guy because he sucked. And let's be honest, he sucked on the track team the year before and decided the easy way out because saying you're a woman now is a coward's way of wanting to compete in sports. You stink, you stink. Okay, I'm not in the NFL. Am I good at sports? Yeah, I'm decent, but I'm not in the NFL. There's a whole certain level. There's a whole certain level of skill sets and abilities that a lot of people and Democrats can't understand that are not born with. We're equal in rights, but we're not equal in terms of ability and things we can do. Not everybody's gonna be born with blue eyes, not everybody's gonna be born with red hair. Someone's gonna be born with this nice permanent tan, and Democrats can't accept that. You want equality of outcome, but not equality to accessibility. And that's a problem. Latinos want access to accessibility so they can build their neighborhoods, have better neighborhoods. But, one party doesn't get it. One party says that you fail and succeed based on what your last name is, what your zip code is, and what the color of your skin is. And that's a lot of Hispanics have had it, and you slowly see the trend amongst Latinos still going in spite of what Democrats say. Oh, Trump's out there arresting Latinos and all that. Unfortunately, there are some cracks in the system that some people who should be arrested do get arrested, but the majority of Hispanics are going to be like, I don't want these people in my streets. I don't want these criminals in my neighborhood. And that's what we need to focus on. That is why you have the unsafe, the high crime conditions in American cities because of a man who had no idea other than using an auto pen how to run the country.
Excellent analogy. And thank for your input, Alex. We're going to go to Donnie now. Donnie, why people of color vote Republican? What factors influence your own political shift towards the Republican Party, if any?
Well, honestly, I feel I've seen a shift of a lot more people who vote Republican simply after the Title 42 crisis, you know, which pretty much ruined our economy. All these Democrats all over the country, and Alex can vouch for me, right? They were all fighting for equity, right? They all lied to Black America, Black and Brown America, even white America. They were fighting for equity for other Americans. That equity wasn't for America. They were fighting for equity for these illegals to come over here, to pay them low wages, right, and give them driver's licenses, and create a new voting base. Okay, so that's why I feel a lot of Black and Brown people moving over to the Republican Party because they've seen this. Just like in Roxbury, when they took over the community center in Roxbury, and they filled it up with illegals. Those are resources that got taken from Boston Public School kids for months. They couldn't go to after school program. They couldn't work out. They couldn't play sports. They had to be stuck in the house. Crime rate was up, because there were no outlets for the kids. So I feel a lot of Black folks and brown folks in the community left the Democrat Party because of that. Also, us exposing that, them taking resources and giving it to America to illegal kids. Second of all, school placements, the seats. It was about 5,000 kids in BPS the last 2 years that had to go homeschooling. I mean, we shouldn't have to have homeschooling since COVID. Kids should be back in the school buildings, going to school every day because that's the best place to learn is in school. But instead, the Democrats want to allocate all of our funds, all our resources over to people who've never paid a cent, into Social Security or any taxes in America. And they call it equity. That's not equity, that's theft, that's treason. And that's the reason why a lot of American and Black folks are waking up. Even in Chicago, New York, they're waking up. You got Blacks for Trump all over Chicago, New York. When is Boston going to wake up? When are they going to see that this communist comrade rule isn't for us?
Well, you guys are deep thinking folks. I really appreciate all this input. I like this. I like this freedom of thought, freedom of speech.
Yeah, I can barely hear you,
I
Hamilton.
said, I like what you guys are saying, this freedom of thought, freedom of speech. And it's quite interesting how you guys share similar views. But we're going to go to the next question, Alex, okay? Which policy areas do you prioritize when evaluating a party? Economy, crime, education, parental choice, and why?
Well, you need an economy. If you want to cut crime, you need to have people have jobs and access to jobs. You can't have an economy based on third world or leftist policies where you play the favorites. You need to have people be able to provide a safe structure that people can invest in their communities, have a business that's geared towards that community. Those are things I believe in. You know, the best is, you look at bodegas and how that is dominated by Dominicans in New York and in Massachusetts inner cities in Lawrence, Havel, Boston. That they saw that there was a lack of access to food because the supermarkets weren't investing in the cities. Now they are somewhat. So you had that nature of was a vacuum. That vacuum was filled in by Latinos, and now also by Arabs, in providing, a little bit more expensive, but providing access to fresh food. Also, the fruits and vegetables from the one's native land. These places also became social gathering places that you want to know the country of, the news from the old country. Crime, you need to have a control on crime. Poverty creates crime. If you don't have a control on crime, you're going to have the poor neighborhoods. You're going to have, like you see on HBO's TV show For Wire, if you've ever been to Baltimore, that East Baltimore in American City is abandoned. That Detroit looks like hell on earth. Those are things you need to not have robbers know that they can do things with impunity. Not saying we should have third world type justice, but we need to have some sort of justice, some sort of criminal control, not gun control, because gun control is BS. We need to control criminals. We need to let them know that there are consequences to laws if they disobey them. Education is very important. I'm very much for school choice because the government has failed, because the government looks at Latinos and blacks as not being able, they can't learn, but yet in Washington, D.C., you had DeMertha High, which was a school, a black majority school in the late 1900s, early 20th century, would send 2, 3, 4 black males to Harvard University. I can only think of 1 or 2 people from Haverhill High that went to Harvard University that I know, because white suburban teachers want to coddle these kids and subscribe to the worst, that they cannot learn. They cannot learn because of the color of their skin. But yet you look at an actor like Paul Robeson, great voice, and I'm trying to think of another actor, William Marshall, I believe was his name, were highly educated black men, went to elite schools, went to Harvard, spoke with such a grace and elegance. But yet we now want you to speak as if you live in the gutter. You look at Jasmine Crockett, who went to elite prep schools, talks like she's from the hood. Honey, you ain't from the hood. That they want to show white America, this is how we speak. I'm sorry, education is important. You want to get far in this country, you go up there and you speak with confidence. You don't go up there and sound like an idiot. And Jasmine Crockett's an idiot. So that's the problem, is that our own people want to give those substandard schools, but yet send their kids to good schools. Jesse Jackson, an example of that. That when I was watching his speech at the 1988 Democratic Convention, talked about his kids that went to school in Massachusetts. I'm like, I didn't know what a prep school was at that time. 20 years old. I mean, I've heard of Phillips, but here's a guy, so-called man of the people, was using the money he shook down to make sure his kids went to good schools. But your kid, now you're gonna have that substandard inner city school, and those are Republican things. We need the civil rights issue of our time is school choice, and we need to be more aggressive about it.
Wow, that was a well said and a mouthful. I have to digest everything you just said, and I think what you expressed is something very powerful. And I would like to see what Donnie has to say. Donnie, which policy areas do you prioritize when evaluating a party? economy, crime, education, parental choice, and why?
All right. My essentials would be economy, education, and crime. You know, in Massachusetts, I mean, all over the country, I feel we need a mobile economy. Um, Economy that has, desirable living standards. The cost of living in Boston and is so high. I feel it's trickling over outside of Greater Boston. I'm sure it may have trickled down to where my brother Alex lives. Right? Has it trickled over there yet?
Oh, it's rent's high. It's working two jobs ain't enough. Some, collecting
Right.
bottles ain't enough.
Right. So it's definitely economy in Massachusetts because they want to implement rent controls, and that's going to hurt us even more. What that's going to do is that's going to allow the elite to buy up the homes after our uncles, our mothers, our pops foreclose on the home because mortgage rates are too high. Refinancing rates are crazy. So if they can't pay for them, they get usurped by the state, right? By the banks. And that's the state plan. That's Maura Healey's plan, actually, to create more housing, which is to usurp land and housing from the people, property from the people, by implementing stormwater policies, new drain water policies, electrical policies, energy policies. And if you don't comply, you get taxed. And if you can't pay the tax, you lose your place, you lose your land. So policies are like this. These type of economic policies are stuff that I want to fight, stuff I want to work with brother Alex and yourself in the future to warn the people about, save the people from. Education also is another essential that I care about. Like Alex said, the charter schools outperform the traditional public schools every year for the last 20 years significantly. And that's just a joke because the charter schools, charter schools and the public schools, the money comes from the same pot, right? So why are they outperforming the traditional public schools? We have to get down to the bottom of that. And I definitely think parents should have school choice, and there should be a voucher system here in Massachusetts. Um, I think parents should speak about that. And crime, like you said, we don't need more gun control because gun control means you can give the power and the reign over to the criminals. That makes the criminals more powerful if you have stricter gun laws. It makes the average person weaker if you make it tougher for a good guy to get a gun. Make it easier for a good guy to get a gun. Don't make it tougher for a good guy to get a gun. So these are the type of gun laws I need to repeal and look over and talk with the people about. And state planning. I care about state planning, the MBTA. I care about that. The MBTA does not want multifamily zoned housing on their property, which means in Brookline they want to build a house and they want to build a development in the Coolidge Corner, and the people in Brookline didn't want it because they said this style of housing will bring unknown people to their community, which means it's going to bring in low income people to their community from all over the state that they don't want, that they don't know about. That's what that means. They don't want low income people in the area, just like they had a policy where it says no gas stoves. No gas stoves means if you can't afford an electric stove, you can't own in Brookline. So these are the type of policies that they use to keep poor people out, blue collar people out of the neighborhoods. And these are the type of policies I want to work on and change, and I want to bring to the light.
Interesting. Thank you for that, Donnie. I'm gonna skip a question and go to Alex because this is a juicy question for Alex, and I Been waiting a while, a couple of days to hear his answers on this question. Alex, are there specific Republican policies you'd like to see expanded or improved to better serve communities of color, especially with the mass GOP?
Well, the mass GOP is an effing joke. Uh, you have to look at national policy. You have to look and see what Trump does. The crime in American cities is getting out of hand, getting out of control. Uh, that's something that needs to be addressed because if you don't get a handle on that, education, public transportation, things of that nature, are never going to get better. Nobody wants to live in a version of Escape from New York. You know, Nobody wants to live in that. And, so we need a better handle on crime. Democratic policy is to have crime, to beat down people to such a point that they have nothing else but to vote for you. Well, we need to inspire and lift people up. We need to give people safety. Because remember, when the Pilgrims came here, the first thing they built was the fort. You need to fortify the fort and have the fort, before you can do anything else. Because if you don't secure the area you're in, Donnie served, I served, if you don't secure, people are going to die. And you got to establish security first. Once you have security in place, everything falls if you do it right and plan it out well. So, we need better crime control policies, not gun control, crime control. Because Democrats can't answer this question is that how does somebody who come here legally or even legally from wherever is able to get a gun? You know, But if I wanted to go in the city of Boston and apply for, I live in Haverhill, but if I wanted to apply for a gun permit, I'd have to be John Paul II to get that. I don't even think that's a guarantee. So we need better handle on crime because when you get a better handle on crime, everything else falls into place. We don't need to import criminals. We don't, I'm not saying that we should favor native born criminals, but we better get a better handle on this because when you look at the word city comes from the Latin word what, civitas, I believe, which is where society starts. Everything, your museums, everything's in the cities. Well, if the city's unsafe, I could see one day a major American museum say, we're out of here. We're going to go take over this abandoned mall in this town 30, 40 miles away. And I can slowly see that happening. So we need to secure the American city first.
Thank you for that, Alex. Now, Donnie, I want to hear your side of the story here. Are there specific Republican policies you'd like to see expanded or improved to better serve communities of color, especially with the mass GOP?
Yes, definitely. But I want to chime in on Alex's last comment. He said, how are illegals getting guns? They're getting guns from the gun buyback program, right? Citizens are giving the guns up to the local police department, and the nonprofits are taking them, selling them over to illegals. This has been documented in New Jersey, Minnesota, New York. The police department's getting caught up. But to answer the question, basically, the Republican policies that I want to push for, I don't think they're Republican policies. I would say they're American policies. Hardworking American blue collar policies, which is I want to push for more trade schools. Education is key. I want to push for upward mobility. That's built through opportunity and steady environments. Steady environments, places where these kids can focus, get their life right. Not dependency. A lot of these kids growing up and looking at dependencies. They're looking at, oh, my mom was on Section 8. Oh, when I'm 18, I can move out and just apply for my own apartment and get the same Section 8. I don't even have to really work in nothing like that. I can just, work a part-time job or sell a couple bags of drugs, and just keep it light, keep the rent down low. This is not the type of mindset that we want to keep creating and passing on because it's a cancer, it's a disease, we want to change kids. We want to give them a good environment, teach them a skill, a trade, so they can pass that down and do something for themselves. That's what I want to do. I want to push for trade schools for all these kids all over Massachusetts.
Wow. Interesting. And thank you for that, Donnie. I have this last question, but I want to, I don't want to get into that last question. I want to hear your perspective, Alex, first. How should I put it? In layman terms, so people can understand what I mean with my question. For example, when I was younger, I used to go into, when I was going to high school, basically, I had a conservative mindset and so on and so forth. People used to tell me, I'm cooning, I'm this, I'm that, I'm a sellout, so on and so forth. Did you ever experience that with your peers, or are you experiencing that now, and how do you deal with it?
Well, first of all, those losers when I was in high school, and I'm going to refer to them as that. I don't care what they say because I'm here talking to you. I got a good job with a pension. I served my country. I look at them and they're like, Don Ale, can you help me? No. Learn your lesson in life.
Yeah.
You call me a sellout. Now you're a loser in society. I mean, it's rough and tough, and people aren't gonna like that. I say that, but that is what they are. You know, and I'm mainstream. I speak my parents' language. I speak it well. I write it well. I read it well. So in this day and age, not too much from Hispanics. They call you a sellout because a lot of people feel like that, but a lot of people say, the reason why I'm not a Republican because the power in this state's not with the Republican Party, or the Republican Party never knocked on my door. But yet I take that same Hispanic, be they a Puerto Rican, Dominican, or whatever, from Lawrence, Havel, Worcester, whatever, Springfield, put them in Florida. That person votes Republican because they're amenable to the politics of the Republican Party. It's just the Republican Party in Massachusetts doesn't have any strengths, doesn't show anything. They want to be Democratic light. Well, that's why you're losing because you want to be Democratic light. You don't tell people what your strengths and what your points are and how to get them. People in your city respect strength. You know, and Republican Party led by suburbanites is not a party of strength. It's a party of losers. It's a party of people that have no idea how to do it. The time to grab Latinos and blacks is now. Well, they're going to blow that opportunity. I'm not going to use the word we because I'm not in the leadership. And if I was in leadership, believe me, half the people that were there won't be there. The time to grab these things and to advance is now. But when you have out and out morons, and I'm not going to apologize for that, when you have a party chair who represents the second Essex district on the Republican State Committee, has no history of reaching out to Latinos, blacks, whatever, Asians in the great city of Lynn, has no history. I think if her gardener was Hispanic, she'd be scared. It would scare her living in Linfield, whatever nice upper class community in West Shore she lives in. She has no idea, no basis. But yet people like me and Donnie, we know who the players are, we know who to talk to. And it begins also in the churches, in both communities. But like I said, we have a chair that what's going to be interesting is we may in the school committee or both become majority minority. And she has to explain, and she needs to be called on the carpet to explain why. This is your bailiwick. When the state Senate seat opened up 8 years ago in a special election, no Republican ran. When the when a special election was held, no Republican ran. You have to explain why you are a failure in your job as a committee woman, as a state chair, and in life, why you're a failure. I have no problem saying that because you cannot address the question, answer the question, why do you hold a damn leadership position in the Republican Party? When you join the positions because you can bring people in, Donnie can bring people in, I can bring people in because we're very active in our communities. People at the current chair, and I'm not going to mention names because fools don't deserve to be mentioned, does not have that ability to do that. You know, and they don't understand that in the inner city, whether you're black or Hispanic, your word is your bond, your word is your promise. And people in the birds don't understand that. They rather have a contract. I believe in contracts are fine, we're talking money. But we're talking about positions of strength, of convincing people why this is why you want to do something. Your word is your strength, your word is your bond. And people in the birds don't understand that.
Thank you, Alex, for that. Donnie, what's your perspective on that?
Repeat the question.
So the question is, when I was in high school, other students used to look at me and say words like "I'm a coon" or "I'm a sellout" or what have you. Knowing that I know my history, why I'm conservative and I'm a Republican. Has this ever happened to you in your past? And if it has, how do you deal with the situation?
Yes, it has happened. Perseverance. I dealt with this situation. Perseverance. People told me I was joining the army. I've heard. I'm a coon because I went to private school, prep school. All stuff like that. I'm soft because I went to prep school. All types of abusive, language like that. But all that stuff is jealousy. You have to understand. There's jealousy and there's gaslighting. These people wish they were in the same position that I was in, that Alex was in. Able to go to the military. Able to pass boot camp. Able to buy a house. Able to afford a car. Able to buy food every week. These people are jealous of that. The same people that said I was a coon or a sellout for going to the army are the same people, you end up, having to help out, a couple times, a year. But, yeah, perseverance, and hard work, effort is how I overcome all those situations. Just proving people wrong. Just staying on the grind and working hard.
All right, thank you. In conclusion, first of all, thank you, Alex and Donnie, for participating in this podcast. Despite the technical difficulties, it was a well thought out, fruitful podcast with viable and interesting topics. I believe in the next podcast, I'm going to invite you guys in a couple more weeks so we can redo this. For folks that are watching, this is going to be this podcast is being recorded, so we're going to post it again on YouTube and edited and so on and so forth. So to wrap this up, today we talked about conservative, black and brown, and basically, we had Alex Veras and Donnie expressing their opinions, and in my opinion, I agree with them on one point, and I disagree with them on another point. But this is what the show is all about. The show is about opinions, perspectives, and understandings. So if we all can agree to disagree, this society will be a better place to live. And I really respect the fact that Alex and Donnie came on the show. 3 separate personalities, 3 separate different point of views, but we got it together and we worked together to get through the show. And I strongly appreciate you guys for coming on board. And till next time, this is Hamilton Rodriguez from The Outsiders.